is the Pegasus Podcast, presented by Night Sports Now. UCF news, views, and a few hot takes. Now, here are your hosts, Bailey Go Knights Adams and Christian Charge On Simmons.
Welcome into episode 168. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCASimmons, and at Night Sports Now. Christian, how you doing? How did you fare during the bye week?
I fared well.
Good.
The biggest obstacle to me currently was that we record in Zoom. That's how we record our podcast, and Zoom moved the record button, and that for some reason broke my brain. I wasn't sure how we were going to handle that. It's not like they changed the process. It's just the button is in a different place, and I was really worried it was going to
only for you though.
Out. Oh yeah. Bailey's Zoom is still normal, and the button's in the normal place, but I'm the one who records the podcast. If you've never noticed that from whenever we have technical issues, it's only Bailey. It's not that Bailey's internet sucks. It's that you're listening to my recording, so I get to just never cut out no matter what. I fared very well during the bye week. I had a nice bye week. It was seriously, I said to you earlier via text, and I'm not even really joking, I don't think I've had fun this season at all, UCF-wise. And I realized that this weekend, because the weekend that UCF did not play was, I think, my happiest college football weekend of the season.
That's fair. I miss when my big complaint on the season was that JRP turned the ball over 3 times against Kent State, even though they won by 50.
Yeah,
I miss when that was the thing that I cared about.
I know. Now we care about the defense allowing literally 40 plus points every game. So
yeah, and just the coaching staff running a quarterback out there, even though he clearly doesn't trust his own legs.
But I have to give some props to the fan base, because when early in the season, when the fan base was being dumb and was we care about
early in the season.
Well, I'm getting there, because when they were we need to fire the DJ because Frankie Valli or whatever, or no, it wasn't Frankie Valli. It was a whole other thing.
Frankie Valli took over the Bucs game yesterday.
Yeah, you were texting me about that.
Oh God, man.
But
anyway, go ahead.
So the fan base was all crazy at the beginning of the season. And I said on this podcast, I was they'll get back to caring about real things once there's some real stuff to care about, because they're just playing Kent State and Villanova, and they beat Boise. And now the season's completely off the rails, and it's the worst it's been since 2016, and everyone's upset. They still are caring about dumb stuff. There's a whole debate on Twitter over whether JRP should have a beard or not. It's fantastic. I actually have to just respect it at this point. The fan base is committed to caring about the dumb stuff.
Not for me. I'm over all of it. I'm over all of it. Actually, that's a really good segue into our 5-star review question.
That's right.
Of which we have one. And I'll give my joke answer, and then I guess we could talk about it. But 5-star review question this week came via YouTube. Keep leaving us some questions. We've got some more to get through in the coming weeks. Please keep dropping those to us however you want. I guess maybe not however you want, but in ways that make sense. This question came from YouTube comments. What is the ideal UCF fan in your opinion? What takes will they have, and how will they approach this mediocre season? And then you sent that to me, and I just replied me, which is definitely not true. But I think, how would you answer this question?
Well, first off, I have to say this was at the Ash Bash Wins who left this on YouTube, and they said they left it on YouTube because they don't have Twitter. And part of that is I'm just curious how people who don't have Twitter find us. I think that's awesome, and I'm thrilled you're a listener. And they said that we're the best UCF podcast of all time, which I appreciate a lot. But I also agree. I think that's the chunk of our audience. We talked about this, that the only critiques we've ever gotten is some people really hate how much we talk about Twitter. And sometimes this was a good reminder message where I'm right, it's not healthy that my entire life revolves around.
Yeah, no, I envy what was the name?
Ash Bash Wins.
I envy you that you're not on Twitter, because it's just a bad place. But also I love it, so I'll never log off. But what's your answer here? I don't really know.
The ideal UCF fan, in my opinion, what takes will they have, and how will they approach this mediocre season? I'm realizing how demented I am, because you made your joke, and in my head, my actual initial thought was they should all just be more like me. They should just do what I do.
I made my joke, but there was some truth in the joke. I feel like that always happens. There was some truth there, because I don't know. I try to be pretty measured. I don't think it's fire everyone, because it's just not real. I try to take a realistic approach to it. I'm also very annoyed and wish they could fire everyone in some moments, but then I get back to reality a little bit. Some people are just stuck in that weird space where they can't kind of course correct. And
so I think I have the answer.
That's fair, but
because what you said that crystallized it for me. I think I have the answer. I think the ideal UCF fan, in my opinion, is a UCF fan who is deeply passionate about the team, but is open to facts. I think would be because I think a classic example of that, which we're going to talk about next, is the details on Gus Malzahn's contract came out, and we'll get to that more in a second, but it is abundant. There is no financial reality where UCF can fire him. I don't mean it would be tough. I mean, it's a literal impossibility. And I tweeted that. A few other people tweeted that, and the group that wants him fired on Twitter were just like, "Well, they need to find a way around." It's like, okay, like when the fans like just facts just go right over their head. Like my biggest pet peeve in the world is when like someone, I'm just trying to think of an example, like someone will be like, the sky is green. And I'll be like, well, no, here's a photo of the sky being blue. And instead of saying, oh, I'm wrong, they're like, well, blue is kind of like green. Like, it's like, just like you got new information, you're allowed to change your opinion. Like, I wish UCF fans were a little more open to when there are actual facts in a situation to say, hey, I didn't have these facts before. I will adjust my opinion accordingly to reality instead of just being like, well, nope, I thought this, so I'm going to think it till I'm 80, because that's just how it goes.
I did appreciate, though, that all these details came out and it was like, can't like firing, and the idea of like firing him with or without cause, and everyone was like, cause he blew a 35-point lead to Baylor or whatever, 28-point lead, I guess it was. But it was just I thought those were, honestly, I thought those jokes were funny, but I'm not sure if they were jokes. I feel like people maybe don't know what cause is.
I actually think a lot of people don't know what cause is. Like, and also like there are schools that like there are 2 schools already this season who have fired their coaches for cause, and it was Michigan State and Northwestern. It was like deeply serious, very bad things, and those coaches are still suing the school saying they shouldn't have been fired for cause. Like, fired for cause is just like not really a thing. So that, although I don't know, like I would be curious, like what if UCF fired Gus Malzahn for cause, and the actual reason they listed in the statement was like, wouldn't give up on JRP. Like just like we can't believe it. It defies reality. We just can't.
That's a wrongful termination lawsuit
waiting to happen. Waiting to happen. But yeah, I don't know. I do think that my ideal UCF fan is still very passionate.
Passionate and realistic, I think, is probably good.
How much of our audience right now is like, the ideal UCF fan is one that stays for the whole game?
Yeah, there's some of them out there. I think the ideal UCF fan listens and loves this podcast.
I feel like we're crafting like a dating profile right now. It's like my ideal UCF fan. I do
Maybe
agree.
That was the goal of this question.
The ideal UCF fan is the one who listens to the Pegasus podcast, and the fans who don't suck. That's my my take. Unless this is your first episode, in which case, welcome in. We're grateful for your first time.
Well, no, then you don't suck anymore. Now you are an ideal UCF fan.
You've been initiated to the cult that is the Pegasus podcast. It was an interesting question, though, because it was interesting to think about, because that's what makes fans so interesting. It's like the old saying, it's like fan is short for fanatic. Like, it's like the parts of fans I like, the fans who have those traits also have the bad traits, because if you care deeply about this team, you're going to be irrational about it. Like, every fan is irrational. We're irrational. It's just that's just part of the recipe, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's true. All right, cool. We will move on into what we kind of just alluded to, which is some of the details of Gus Malzahn's contract finally came out, and there's some interesting stuff here. A lot of it boiled down is they are just financially incapable of firing him anytime soon. That's correct. There's that. And then there's some interesting like bonuses and like little clauses in here that are I don't know what's going on in here.
So let me give a little bit of background. And I actually probably should have remembered what we have or have not said on the podcast before this background, because I know we talked about the contract, but there was a really weird situation around this contract where UCF would not release the contract. Pete Thamel was the one who broke the salary, and all he had was Gus Malzahn is making this amount. I think we talked about that already, because that was a couple weeks ago. And then local media, as they do, requested the contract. Hey, can we get the full contract? Which is always a thing for all sports. And UCF was like, no, we're not releasing the contract. So it got a little feisty. The Sentinel had to really, really push for their release. And in the past, they've had to get their lawyers involved to get stuff like this done. And UCF still actually, don't be fooled, hasn't released the contract. They released the executive summary of the contract, which at least got us the bot information, all that. But I'm still weirded out by all of this. I don't know why. And it's also just another example of, I just feel like it's been a long running thing these last few years of like UCF just keeps like sort of making small situations into things. And I don't know why. And this is another example. Like, I have no idea why they decided not to release this contract, but whatever. We have the bot information now. So UCF, I am speaking now directly to our listeners who want Gus Malzahn fired, which I'm not saying that. Let me clarify.
Fired right now.
You can want him fired. Like, you can want that. It's just understanding it's not possible. Like, I want to have $1 billion. I know that I don't, and probably won't unless this podcast gets much more popular. So I think that, it's okay to want it and acknowledge that it's not possible.
Almost a similar situation to where things were with Josh Heupel in 2020.
Yeah, and I was getting beat up for that. I was like the one guy on Twitter who was like, guys, have you looked at his contract? Like, they can't fire him. And also, it would probably be dumb too anyway, since he was like 28-8 as a head coach. And they were like, get him out of here. I agree the team was declining, but still. But anyway, all that to be said, if UCF decided to fire Gus Malzahn after the season, as you, the fans, want, they would owe him $15 million For comparison, $15 million is more than UCF spends on all of its coaches' salaries combined in the last fiscal year. I don't mean all the football coaches. I mean every single coach in UCF's employ, from rowing up to the football team, all the head coaches, all the assistants, everything, that all added up to $14.8 million last year. So they would take all that money to fire Gus Malzahn. That's obviously not happening. It drops to $12 million if they wanted to fire him after 2024. That's also not doable. In 2025, it drops to $8.3 million. By then, maybe, because by then UCF would also be a full share member of the Big 12, but even then $8.3 million is a lot. So basically, bottom line is UCF is tied to Gus Malzahn. He will only leave if he wants to leave. There's not really a reality at any point in the foreseeable future where they can get rid of him, which has pros and cons.
Yeah, with that being the case, it's just he's got to figure it out. I just need him for everyone's sanity. He's got to figure something out.
But I think he will. Well, I don't think he will. I don't know. He might not. And this is what I'm realizing the more I think about everything that's gone wrong in the Malzahn era, is that he'll figure it out. The only thing he really keeps screwing up is quarterback. Everything else is kind of okay. The defensive problems, I don't know if those are necessarily on Malzahn. I think that was more just they had misses in the portal. That's that. But all of life is easier if you have a really good quarterback. And it's just been frustrating that UCF's had in a 2.5-year span, 6 shots at that, and has somehow messed it up every single time. So I think that's where a lot of the frustration is. But the con is that UCF can go 3-9 next year and 2-10 the year after, and he's still gonna be here if he wants to be. UCF can't do anything about it. The upside is this really does help recruiting a lot. This is one of the number one concerns that players have when they are looking at schools, is that the coaching staff, they're going to get there and the coaching staff will not be there. So the recruits, knowing that Gus has full on stability and security and they don't have to worry about showing up and he gets fired, that is absolutely going to pay dividends in recruiting. Gus Malzahn can kind of leave whenever he wants. On the other side, his buyout starts at $7 million, which is not insubstantial, but say that UCF was not having the season they're having. Say, okay, let's just live in a fantasy land where they inexplicably win out from here. They beat Oklahoma and win other games. They're 9-3. Whoa, what a turnaround. And Arkansas decides they want Gus. Gus, who in his press conference today said he grew up a Razorback through and through. I think Tennessee paid $6 million to get Heupel, so $7 million is nothing for these SEC and Big Ten teams. So that's whatever. But I want to bring up something interesting, and I'm curious what you think about this. We're venturing into tinfoil hat territory, guys. So bear with me. We occasionally go into, and Bailey always looks around. He does it again every time I say this podcast. Bailey looks around.
This time I did it consciously. Last time I'm pretty sure I just kind of did it out of just, I don't even know why, but this time I remembered last time, and
it always weirds me out because you look so genuine about it. I'm expecting you to be yeah, I have my tinfoil hat already. But
one of these times I'm gonna have one right next to me. I'm gonna pull it. I'm just gonna put it on.
So let's talk about Arthur Gustavo Malzahn's buyout from UCF. If he wanted to leave after this season, if Gus Malzahn got an offer from some school who was just why
did you do that? Why did you call him by his full name?
Well, it's a contract. It's more official.
Okay, that's fair.
Right? Actually, I have no idea why I did that. I don't know. I feel like his whole coaching journey is different if he went by Arthur Malzahn, right? Arthur Malzahn feels like a way worse football coach than Gus Malzahn. Am I wrong about that?
And we're not sure about Gus Malzahn as a football coach himself, so
could have gone by Artie Malzahn. I love people who have options for their names because I have none. My name is Christian. I had Christian or Chris. Those were my two choices, and Chris is a terrible name unless your name is Chris, in which case, thank you for listening to the Pegasus Podcast. But anyway, I'm not I don't know.
Every week on the Pegasus Podcast, we insult at least one person that listens to the podcast.
Let me clarify. I've met Chris's I liked. I'm not saying that if your name's Chris, you suck. I just personally would not want to go by Chris. And I feel bad because most people I know who go by Chris, their name is actually Christopher, and you really did get screwed because if you go by Christopher, then you kind of just seem weird, right? I've never met anyone who has introduced himself to me as Christopher. Have you?
I'm not sure. I was going to say my cousin's name is Christopher, but I think he his friends call him Chris.
I've never met someone and I was hi, I'm Christian. And they're I'm Christopher. I just don't feel like people introduce. So I feel like you're really screwed if your name's Christopher. But
anyway.
Yeah. I guess you're kind of screwed too because Bailey you can't do anything with. And you would never go by your middle name. Can I say your middle name on the podcast? Or is that
if you want?
Bailey's middle name is Joseph, which no one's going by Joseph. Right?
I love how you asked for my permission. I appreciate that.
Well, I don't know. I just
it's funny because my Twitter handle is Bailey J Adams 22. So there's the J in there, but I don't know if people didn't know what that stood for.
And mine's by C.A. Simmons. So same principle, but yeah. So
yeah, I don't know. But anyway, you go back to what you were going to say. Sorry, I took us off the rails because you called him Arthur Gustavo Malzahn.
What was I going to? That's right. Okay, I remember. Yeah. Okay, so tinfoil hat time. We got way off course. Tinfoil hat time, everybody. So if Gus Malzahn wanted to leave after this season, why are you laughing?
Because the pipe is back. Now you're shaking the pipe at the people.
This is so bad. This has been bad. I'm putting the pipe down. I'm putting it out of reach. This has been a bad few minutes of podcasting. I apologize.
No, I think it's been great.
All right, we're back on the rails. Tinfoil hat time. If Gus Malzahn wanted to leave after this season, he would owe UCF $7 million. If he wants to leave after 2024, he would owe UCF $6 million. And this isn't a percent of anything. This is a raw amount. This is where it gets interesting, and this is where I get a little tinfoil hat-ish, is that the method of determining his buyout flips following the 2024 season and turns into 25% of remaining compensation, which means that it would go from $6 million to leave after 2024 to only $2.8 million to leave after 2025, which is also equivalent to one payment from Auburn, which I kind of find funny. It's almost the exact amount Auburn pays me each year.
Yeah.
Is Gus Malzahn going to retire after 2025? Is that language in there so that he can get out easily if he decides to hang it up then? That kind of is along the timeline that we've suspected for a while.
I think,
or am I being crazy?
I think it at least gives him the option. Like
Yeah.
it's there as an option because I think that would be realistic, and I think he might have that rough timeline in his head. We'll see, how the next couple seasons go, but I don't know.
I found that interesting, and I don't think even if that is the case that it's like a set in stone thing, but I didn't find it as like that the language changing in the buyout going from dropping 1 million to then more than being cut in half kind of feels like an out basically. That if Gus's 2025 is over and he's like, I'm ready to hang it up, which feels that would have been what, 5 years as head coach?
21, 22, 23. Yeah.
Yeah. So who knows? I don't know. I just thought that language was interesting and worth noting so that when he retires after 2025, I can take a victory lap.
Yeah. That's fair. I think it's probably again, it's not a thing that's set in stone, but it's like if he wants to, then it's an easy option for him.
Yeah.
But if he wants to keep coaching, then he also still has a contract. So
plus 2.8 million, he could have literally just saved one Auburn check.
This all works out really well for him.
It's a great contract if you're Gus Malzahn. His agent earned his money. My God.
You want to get into some of the bonuses?
Let me say one more thing on that before fans get an uproar, because a lot of fans are really mad about the buyout. I checked, and the buyout is pretty on par with what most Big 12 teams do. There are a couple with really small ones, like Kansas State's coach has a really small buyout. If they wanted to fire him, I think Iowa State's has a small one, but I checked, and a lot of them are similar. I'm trying to pull it up because I know I tweeted it when the contract. Yeah, so Houston would owe $15 million to fire Holgorsen. Kansas would owe $12.5 million to fire Leipold. West Virginia would owe $13 million to fire Neil Brown. Like, it's not like UCF got fleeced here. This is pretty common.
Yeah, and I guess you said Houston, so it's kind of going to counteract my point. But I was thinking like a lot of them have been full share Big 12 members for years, so they have that money if they do want to. It's just I think it's a bigger deal for UCF because it's like that is a amount of money they cannot pay right now.
And I will say that's true that both West Virginia and Houston have. I'm reaching for the pipe. Like I'm literally talking and I start reaching for it. I don't know why.
Wait, so Houston does have that. I guess they probably.
Yeah, they got the oil money. Houston. Yeah,
they do.
If Houston wanted Holgorsen gone, I could be wrong. Maybe if it got so bad, like say UCF. I hate even saying this. It feels awful to say. Say UCF goes like 5-7 this year, and then they're literally 2-10 next year. So many people would be so angry. I almost feel like they could maybe scrape together the money. I mean, they would be bankrupting themselves. Like it would really hurt the athletics program long term, but they could maybe actually sort of make it happen. It would just deeply set back athletics and you would have no money to pay your next coach. But
right. And the argument I've seen people make is like, oh, it's going to cost you more to like keep him as head coach. It's actually not. Like financially, no, it's not. Let
me also say this contract is also very much a brag and something that other coaches are supposed to notice because they're going to be paying by 2 years from now. Malzahn's going to be making I think he's going to be third or fourth in the Big 12 in salary. And UCF is intentionally making a statement there that they're like, hey, we're in the Big 12 now. We're paying real coaches salaries. And that's going to become even more important. Oh, that's another thing they did not include in this contract, or excuse me, the executive summary. We don't have a salary pool. We don't know how much the assistant salary pool
which is very important.
That's literally more important than what Gus is making, especially at this stage in his career. So that's disappointing. But anyway, yes, let's talk about the incentives. The only part of the contract where I was like, okay, I'm legitimately stunned that UCF, I don't know what they're doing here.
Did you want?
I have them. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, I have them too.
I don't know.
I don't know which ones you want to talk about because I don't really want to get all of them. But
yeah, I forgot because I was going to tell you in advance which ones I took issue with, and you said not to.
Yeah.
Gus Malzahn can earn $25,000 for an additional $25,000 for really, really weird and really specific things. The ones I took issue with were if UCF is in the top 20 of explosive run plays, he gets $25,000. If UCF is in the top 20 of explosive pass plays, he gets $25,000. And I'm torn on these because I don't know what purpose they serve. And I also want to say that, let me be clear, $25,000 to Gus is like me finding $5 on a street. Like, I don't think he's going to be like risking it all for these, but I'm just imagining a reality where like UCF is like down like 56-21 and Gus is calling these ridiculous plays in the fourth quarter because he's like, we got to get our explosive play in so I can keep my bonus. Like, I don't know what you're incentivizing with this. All you should be incentivizing are wins and losses and achievements. That's it.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre to look at some of these. Lowest percentage of explosive run plays allowed. I don't think that's going to work out for him this year.
Yeah, nope.
Lowest yards per play allowed. I also don't think it's going to work out. Scoring defense isn't going to work out for him. So he does have incentives to get the defense on track. If we're talking money in terms, and not just pride and I don't know, winning games.
I mean, what is $25,000 to someone who is already making $2+ million from UCF and is also making $2.8 million from Auburn, is now going to be making $4.5 and then $5.5 million from UCF? 25,000 is nothing.
But it's funny when you look at like the different ones, because like all those really specific things are $25,000, and then if UCF finishes in the top 15 of the final CFP rankings, it's $25,000. Like you'd think that would be more than
would be a lot more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Than top 20 in explosive run plays. But
I also like how they wrote in the really bold thing they did was write in bonuses for New Year's Sixes, even though this is the final year that New Year's Six bowls exist, so that he would have had, and it even says that in the contract, like he would have literally had to make one this year. So like, that's cool that they were like, we have to make sure that Gus
only.
zero shot that UCF makes a New Year's Six bowl in 2023. But in case they do, Gus will be due $25,000.
$25,000 for a win in a non-CFP bowl game. So don't tell me that bowl games don't matter, because he's trying to win some money by winning a bowl game. Didn't get that against Duke, but
25,000. I don't know what they were going for there, but I guess the idea being that if UCF had a really good season, they would be hitting like 9 of those, and that would add up to real money. Is that the concept? But it'd be funny if there was like $25,000 if you start one quarterback.
See, that's the thing is, if we were in charge of this, we would have put that in there.
We would really be screwed. Like, I'm surprised that UCF did, but it's like $25,000 if the quarterback rushes for 1,000 yards. Like, just keep like feeding his worst impulses.
$200,000 for a college football playoff national championship. So,
as opposed, interesting. Actually, that's a very interesting phrasing. $200,000 not for a national championship or claiming a national championship, for a college football playoff national championship.
Yeah,
that was not the language in Frost's contract, and why Danny White paid his bonus out.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, a lot of this is very interesting, and some of it's kind of funny if you take a step back and look at it objectively. But if you're in it, some of it is concerning.
So here's where my brain goes, because I'm even thinking about this more, because there's also, I know that I'm just prolonging the podcast, but he also has bonuses in there for if he wins Coach of the Year awards. But Coach of the Year awards are a thing people vote on. Like, that's no metric or anything. Like, it's just like how popular of a year you had. Like, I don't get that one.
I don't know.
Gus could go to the voters and be like, I'll give you 10,000 of the 25,000 if you vote me.
Just divide it up. Yeah. So that's a lot to get through, but we will now move on to UCF has a game this week.
They do, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's regrettable that they do. They're going to Oklahoma, number 6 Oklahoma, and our main storyline for this game is just, can UCF avoid being embarrassed at Oklahoma? I'm afraid they can't.
I'm not so sure. The presser was interesting today. So we got the big news that John Rice Plumlee is nearly 100% is the language that was used, and he is going to start. He walked up on stage in a knee brace to announce he would be starting and talked about how
and it's nearly 100%.
Nearly 100%. He said that his exact phrasing, which I loved, was that there has been no Rice Krispies in his knee in the last 2 weeks. So that's a good sign. So I'm hopeful that I actually am feeling good about this, because he talked more about, and we talked about this on our past podcast, that it did sound like the issue at Kansas was really just more mental than physical, and that it probably just, the staff should have acknowledged he probably just wasn't ready to get back out there. So I'm confident. JRP's back. That's big. I think Ricky Barber also spoke to me today and said he's back healthy. He has not been healthy since like the second or third game of the season, and he's tried to go a couple times and couldn't. I think having him back is a way bigger than having JRP back. That might be like a hot take that some people disagree with, but they've missed him on defense.
I don't disagree at all. I just think the drop off, and that's, I don't know, it's not even really fair to say the drop off like player to player, because John Walker has done an admirable job for
it's
a true freshman, but it's depth. And it's difficult for anybody to be out there for 100% of the plays, especially when, your defense as a whole is not getting off the field. So it's like these teams have been able to run on them, and they're just wearing them down play after play. So to have that depth is going to be huge. And to have a player like Ricky Barber, who has been really, really good for UCF, is a big deal. And I think it's a bigger deal because this game is what it is, I guess. I don't really like that cliche, but like, it's starting JRP and starting Timmy in this game, I don't think really changes a ton.
Probably not.
I don't think it does. And I guess I can't even really say that Ricky starting changes a ton either, because of the game in itself. But I think going forward, having a healthy Ricky Barber back is a huge deal.
You look at how good John Walker has played, was named a midseason true freshman All-American by On3. Taking that production from being a guy you need out there basically every play to coming in relief of a even better player, that is they have missed Ricky Barber. I just think his presence alone is going to help with some of these run defense issues. I know that's only so fixable, but and what you said is exactly how I feel. Like, I'm looking at this Oklahoma game, like, we could be like a podcast that just sits here and tells you guys how we think they're going to win and blah, blah, blah. And,
we did in 2021.
You have to have faith. Yeah. And it's like, and that was dumb and wrong. But and I'm not saying, I understand it's college football and anything can happen. I understand that there is a world out there in the infinite multiverse where UCF wins this game and some crazy stuff happens. But most of the time, when you see a situation where a top 5 or a top 10 team is taken down by an okay to bad team, which is what UCF is this year at 3-3, it's either top 5 or top 10 team has had clear issues throughout the season and this team finally exposed it, or 3-3 team has some extenuating circumstances where they're actually a lot better than the record. Neither of those things are true right now. So I just don't see a path that's being competitive. What I do hope is that we see enough in this game, they keep it respectable enough that it gives us some hope for the rest of the season of, hey, they might have fixed some of this stuff. They might have figured stuff out. Gus said these last 2 weeks, they focused on fixing the defensive issues as much as they can. They focused on penalties, which has been a way bigger issue than I feel like we've even touched on. They focused on offensive execution. So like,
I think it's just because that's been an issue for every year under him. It's like, what can we even say? I
know it's frustrating, but I just need to see like enough here. Like a 14-point loss tells you, hey, maybe they're back on track here and they can build some. And I think it builds confidence for themselves. If they go on the road and play a closer game, I think this team can feel better than if they go out there and just get destroyed. Then it's like, I'm worried.
This is really sad, but let's play the button game that you like to play sometimes on the podcast. If you could press a button right now and UCF loses on Saturday by 14, or you just take a risk and see what else could happen, you got to press the button, right?
I tweeted when the odds came out and they were 17-point underdog, I said I'd lock that in right now if I could. That's a 17-point loss. So hell yeah, you're giving me 3 more. I'll take 14.
Yeah.
If they lost, like, it depends on the 14 though, right? Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Like how it happens. You know what I mean? Like, would you rather they win? Would you rather they lose 17-3, or would you rather they lose like 56-42?
17-3, I think.
I think I'd rather see 56-42. Them putting up 42 on a top 10 team, I'd be like, okay, they can win some.
Yeah, but odds. Them also, like, the defense, given what it has done so far this season, the defense holding them to 17 points. Oklahoma,
yeah, but 17-3 makes me feel like the offense sucks and Oklahoma just didn't care that much. Like, that's what 17-3 looks like.
Still
to me.
Though, 17, like, I don't know.
Only like they beat Cincinnati 20-6. Anyone come out of that thinking, wow, Cincinnati gave them hell?
No, and I don't think we'd come out of that with UCF thinking that. I would just feel better about the defense going forward if that's the kind of game that they played. Because
it's gonna be both of these. It's not gonna be 56-42 or 17-3. It'll just be 56-3.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would lock that because I don't want to roll the dice because I'm sorry, but I'm not saying they're not going to win. I'm just saying they're not going to win. Like, there's just no path for them winning this game. So why even mess around with that?
Well, we will later in the podcast because that's what we do in the way we set these up. But I've got some things to say. Let's get our key stats first. Why'd you give me that face?
I don't know. I'm just curious where that's
going. I just went a fun route with those instead of like actual things because they're not going to win the game.
Okay.
Key stat number 1, since 2016, this is actually we got this from Matt Murschel of the Orlando Sentinel. He tweeted this out, I think on Sunday. Since 2016, UCF has been a double-digit underdog 5 times. And those games were in 2021 against Cincinnati. They were a 21-point underdog and they lost. 2017 against Auburn in the Peach Bowl, they were a 10-point underdog, which I didn't remember that being a 10-point underdog. And they won the game, of course.
Yep.
2016, they were a 10-point underdog against USF and lost. 2016, they were a 10-point underdog against Maryland. They lost the game, but they did cover. That game went to double overtime, I think it was.
Yep.
And then 2016 against Michigan was they were a 36-point underdog and they lost, and they did not cover 36 points. So yeah, and I think I looked at it earlier, and I think they were what was it? I think it was 19.5 when I looked.
Yeah,
maybe
it's
20.
Been moving around a little bit. No, it wasn't. It didn't hit 20 yet.
No,
I think it's kind of wild that in the last 8 seasons, UCF's only been a double-digit underdog 5 times. Like, that's honestly kind of a crazy accomplishment. With 3 of those coming in 2016, and 3 of them being by exactly 10. Like, it just speaks to as much success as UCF had. Now, don't get me wrong; they have lost games by double digits that they were several recently, actually. So it's not, but I hope this stat puts into context a little bit the fans who were like expecting a miracle. I don't know if anyone's expecting a miracle, but I've just seen a lot of fans, and I get it. I don't want to not be excited for a UCF game, but I'm not, guys. There's just not necessarily a path here, and I think
what was the spread against Kansas? Sorry to interrupt, but
I don't
It wasn't
know.
double
UCF
digits?
was favored. UCF was
They were
favored against
favored?
Kansas. Yeah, they were 2-point favorites.
Why? Okay,
Because
anyway.
Jalen Daniels. Is it Jalen or Jaden? I can never get straight which one is at LSU and which
Jalen.
one is.
LSU.
I wonder if anyone's
Jaden
noticed
is at LSU.
that on 3 straight podcasts I was exclusively referring to him as Daniels because I can't remember which one is him and which one is LSU.
I don't even think I noticed.
Yeah, you can go back and listen. I'd always call him Daniels. But anyway, Daniels was not playing, so they opened as like 3-point dogs, and by the time the game kicked, they were like 2-point favorites. So
That's insane. Okay, anyway.
that means UCF's going to win this game. But I think it says a lot that every single time in the last 8 years they've been double-digit underdogs. The only time they've won was when it was the best team in school history. So probably not feeling optimistic.
I don't think this team's in the same conversation. Just quite frankly, if that surprised anyone, then I don't know what you're doing. I don't know. I don't like we just talked about it. If we could lock in that they cover, I think I would do it because
I'd be thrilled.
I think it's going to be a lot worse than,
I'd be thrilled
than whatever 19
because
points it is.
If we get to go do a post-game podcast on Saturday, which I'm sure like 3 of you are going to listen to after UCF gets annihilated, but if we get on that podcast and say, hey, they played well, they competed, it wasn't a game where Oklahoma could ever really take their foot off the pedal, they showed some signs of life, I feel good about this, that's all I'm looking for here. Just show me that you can beat some of these teams on the rest of the schedule. Don't go out there and get destroyed. Just don't get destroyed.
No, I feel the same way because if they go out and lose 50-7, then I'm not going to feel good about them going through against West Virginia even next week and winning that game.
Because you also worry about the mental state of the locker room at that point, because Gus talked about, and he said they kind of treated this like a reset these last 2 weeks, midway point of the season. That's smart. They kind of had to, but if they come out of that reset and just get stomped again, I just worry,
Well, that's why, to me, it sucks that this coming out of the bye week is against Oklahoma, who also is coming off their bye week, by the way. But because if they were coming into West Virginia off their bye week and they were 3-4, I'd feel a little bit better. Like, oh yeah, we reset, because you can reset as much as you want over 2 weeks. But you're still playing the number 6 team in the country, who is, last year was, I think, their worst year in, I forget, like decades. And then this year, like, they're already back to just being really, really good. Actually, probably even better than some of their previous teams, because I just think they've got a better defense and they're more balanced.
They're not only the number 6 team in the country. They just beat Texas. They're in the driver's seat to win the Big 12. They're in the driver's seat to go to the playoff. This is a team that might even be able to win a national championship. This is a team that beat Arkansas State 77-0, has just been beat Iowa State 50-20. Iowa State, who's number 2 in the Big 12 standings right now, somehow. It's like this, and this is a team who, I can't believe we got this far on the podcast without saying it, has a quarterback who is legitimately in the Heisman conversation, who you may have heard of because he played for UCF once upon a time. So I told you the other day I have 2 futures on for the Heisman Trophy, and Dylan Gabriel is one of them, because I put a future on him last year and it did not work out. And I knew that as like all the conversation was starting now with him this year, I would kick myself if I didn't just throw a little bit of money on him. It took me way too long to guess the second player when we talked about that, because you were like, guess who the players are. My first one was like Dylan Gabriel, and you're like, correct. And I just could not figure out the second one. And
the second one was Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels. He's the LSU
Jaden
one.
Daniels, the LSU.
Why
one.
is that so hard for me? I don't
know. Man, they're similar names. I guess that's why it's hard. But
I know, but they are 2 different names, and for some reason, my brain is just like, you literally said it to me earlier, and I just didn't process it all. I'm like, just okay, that's great.
Yeah,
but I don't know. But anyway,
all right, let's go to key stat number 2. We talked about Oklahoma being in the top 10 in the college football playoff era. As a top 10 team playing at home, Oklahoma is 31-3. It's a good record.
Very good record. And UCF's about to make it 31-4. Crazy.
Yeah,
this is another thing that I feel like we almost haven't touched on enough, is that you could almost talk me into the possibility of a major upset if this was a home game. If the bounce house was going to be rocking, if everyone's pissed at Dylan and the crowd would have been crazy. And it's like, we've dreamt about for years, UCF actually getting an opponent of that caliber at home. It hasn't happened since I was like a kid, basically. Like that you could talk me into it. It's at Oklahoma. It's in front of 90,000 opposing fans. It's a stadium that they rarely ever lose in, and they especially don't lose in when they're really good. And I will say the 3 teams that beat them, they were all kind of middle of the pack teams in the Big 12, which is kind of funny. But it was Kansas State twice and Iowa State once, which is kind of interesting. And this was before Kansas State was like, crazy. But so I don't know. I wish I saw a path here, guys. I do. I just really, really don't.
It'd be cool if it did.
It'd be very cool if they did. Where would that rank? Let's say that UCF wins. John Rice Plumlee rushes for 1,900 yards in a single game. I don't know, Dylan Gabriel.
That's how much Kansas ran against UCF.
It's about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
399 rushing yards. I am never going to go over that stat for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm the guy who I don't like talking about yards. But that's like been a long running thing because I would hate, and that came from 2016 where UCF would like lose a game by 20 and people would be like, oh, they outgained them in the second half. I'm like, I don't care. But 399 rushing yards. But let's just say UCF wins. They beat Oklahoma. Wow. Where does that rank all time in UCF wins?
Up there. I don't know. It'd be their first Big 12 win ever.
That's so stupid. Because then we'd have people on Twitter being like, it was worth losing the others for the first win to be this special. And I'd be all pissed at them.
Nope. Nothing will ever be worth losing that Baylor game.
I was going to say, what I'm realizing is it actually, like, I think if they beat Oklahoma, I'd be pissed. Because I'd be like, if you just hadn't lost to Baylor, you'd be 5-2 right now. You would be like ranked probably and like in the Big 12 conversation. Yeah. And instead you're like, oh, good. UCF's not going to go winless in Big 12 play this year. Nice.
Yeah. No, it would rank up there. I mean, I guess obviously all the ones, like all the big wins from like the best years would rank above it, but
Auburn's still ahead of it. Baylor's still ahead of it. I'd probably put Louisville still ahead of it.
Yeah. But I mean, would you put it over that Penn State game in 2013? I'd say.
I definitely put it over Penn State. I put it over Florida in the Gasparilla.
Put it over
obviously.
Florida.
It's probably like the third or fourth biggest win ever. It's so cool. We're gonna get to see that this weekend.
Yeah. I hate that we even talked about it because now I'm like, oh, it'd be cool.
It's not it's not. I just want the game to not be over after 3 drives. That's what I'm rooting for.
Yeah. Key stat number 3, UCF has never made a bowl game in a season in which they had lost 4 straight games, a 4-game losing streak. They're gonna lose this game. And it'll be a 4-game losing streak. So they're gonna try to do that for the first time ever.
I don't think
the road will be difficult.
It will not be easy because they're playing a lot of teams, and it will be easier than the first half of the season. Like, don't get me wrong. Actually, I don't even know if that's true because they had Villanova and Kent State in the first half of the season. But whatever, the Big 12 slate at least. The second half of the Big 12 slate is a little more ideal. But I don't think we're processing how bad 4 straight losses is. That's a third of your season. Like UCF is about to lose a third of their season straight, and that's tough to recover from.
You and I both separately have had the realization within the last 24 hours that as we're talking today, October 16th, it's been 1 month since UCF's last win.
Yeah.
And it was against Villanova.
I also said to you, I don't know if we're ready for the conversation. I'm not going to have that conversation yet. We'll have it after they lose to West Virginia. Is like we're in the territory now where UCF could actually finish dead last in the Big 12. That's not that crazy of a notion when you look at how the conference is shaping up right now.
Which is, I mean, not to derail the conversation even more than I already have on this podcast, but if they finish last in the Big 12 in football and then they somehow manage to not finish last in the Big 12 in men's basketball, I'm going to throw a parade.
So I don't know if I've said this on the podcast.
None of you are invited.
But can I come?
Yeah, you can come.
Okay, thanks. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but I'm like going out of my way and have been for like 2 months now to just tweet all the time about how terrible men's basketball is going to be because I'm trying to lower expectations to the point that when they're not that bad, people are like,
your own expectations?
I don't think they're going to be.
I think everybody's expectations are already, I think, as low as they can possibly be.
I don't think they're going to be as bad as people think they are. I don't think, and it's
but I think everyone's thinking they're going to be horrible.
But it's because people don't understand how basketball works. Like people, like I get that because like most people mainly focus on football, but like they have a non-conference slate where they're going to clean up on it. There's only like 2 tough games. They don't leave the state, so they're going to get like 10 wins just in the non-conference slate. They're going to go in. I don't believe they're going to go winless in the Big 12. They beat Oklahoma State last year. I think that they will grab like at least 2. I think is fair. And then at that point, you're looking at a team that's like maybe 13-17. Everyone thinks they're going to be like 3-27 for some reason. So I think if everyone thinks that, and then they're like 13-17, and they have these great recruits coming in, people will be like, oh, okay, they're not as embarrassing as I thought. So
which they do have some recruiting's going well right now.
They've landed 2 of the top recruits ever for them. They landed a 2025 guy who's a top 30 player in the country for that class, and they landed a 2024 guy who's a top 100 player. I think he's 89th or something like that, and he's a point guard. So that's exciting. I don't know what's going on. The kingdom has to be contributing somehow because that's how college basketball works. But like, we hope this would happen, that just being in the best conference in the country in basketball would get guys interested. And it is.
For now.
So I really hope fans trust the process. No, they're not going to, but I really hope they do. And let me clarify, UCF's never going to be good in the Big 12 in basketball. Like that's never going to happen. It doesn't matter what coach you hire or whatever. They just don't have the money for it. But they could work their way back to kind of being what they were at points in the AAC where they can be respectable enough to sneak into the tournament here and there. And I think that's probably enough for most of the fan base. Go to the tournament once every 3-4 years. I think that's doable.
Yeah. All right. So we finished. Anything else to say on the key stat number 3? I don't think. I mean, the path to a bowl is difficult, but
yeah, I forgot we were talking about the Oklahoma game. I was moving on to basketball. Yeah. No, that's pretty much They're going to have to go 3-2 to make a bowl after the Oklahoma game.
That's how bad things are right now. So I'm like, all right, basketball starts in like less than a month.
I had that thought, man, and I was like, you need to stop that right now. But at least basketball will get to go through the hope phase. Like they'll win a couple of those bad games, and it'll be like, so random player had 20 points. I don't know. That could be something. I mean, all I have to say is just I still believe they're going to make a bowl, which is probably stupid. I think they are going to break that stat, but it's going to be tough.
I don't know what I think now.
You beat Cincinnati, you beat Houston, you beat one of West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and Texas Tech, and you go to a bowl. I know that's hard. They're not guaranteed to beat Cincinnati. They might be, though, because Emory Jones is terrible at football, but it's tough. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, it will be. So let's get into it's funny how at the beginning of the season we had games against Kent State and Villanova. We had the how can UCF win, how can UCF lose? And it was like, it's not even really worth doing the how can UCF lose. This one's almost not worth doing how UCF can win it. But Christian, how could UCF win the game?
I have JRP goes off on offense, and whatever changes the team makes on defense are enough to prevent Oklahoma from scoring 60 points. Which Gus did say they made a lot of. He was saying there's all sorts of scheme stuff they're changing on defense that's going to help with the run defense, but all the scheme in the world can't make up for the fact that they don't have good linebackers. So I don't know how much they can do here, but
yeah. So my version of how UCF can win is if they replace the entire defense with some combination of the 85 Bears, the 2000 Ravens, and the 2002 Bucks, and they were able to counter Oklahoma's number 8 with a number 8 quarterback of their own, prime Dante Culpepper. That's okay. what I'm going with.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. That's what I'm going with.
UCF would win. All right. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let's just. Who cares about this? Like, let's talk about this instead. They're not going to win the game. Who cares? Say that. Congratulations. You are, I don't know, a wizard or something, and you get to add one past UCF player in their prime to UCF's team right now for the Oklahoma game. What player would you add that would give them the best chance at winning?
I don't think there's anybody. Like, that's the
Is there any
part.
single player you can add that you now think they might win that game?
Probably not, because I don't think one player changes that entire defense, and I don't think the defense is good enough to win this game.
But if you had to add someone, who'd you add? Who would get them close?
I guess you'd probably want to go with a quarterback. You'd probably go Dante, right?
I might throw like Shaquille Griffin out there. Just like
Shaquille, yeah.
Hope that's.
I thought about Shaquem, and I was like, well, then they'll just like, I don't know, they'll just
Yeah.
run away from him, and I don't know. He's gonna he might get 2 sacks, but that's not going to win the game because of it.
If I add Dylan Gabriel, does it subtract him from Oklahoma?
Yeah, I guess so. And then what do they have? General Booty behind him?
No, they have the 5-star, the guy who what's his name? I don't want to say his name because it might be wrong. I think his name's Jackson Arnold.
Oh, what happened to General Booty? Is he the 3rd string?
Yeah, General Booty's not good.
Oh, I don't know his name because
Jackson Arnold. He's a true freshman 5-star.
That name does ring a bell.
There were murmurings in the offseason that he might supplant Dylan Gabriel. Like he was that good.
Which is kind of insane because Dylan wasn't bad last year.
No, the team was just terrible.
Yeah.
And their worst losses came when he didn't play. So, but I think that's just kind of how,
Yeah.
It's the old saying. It's the quarterback gets too much praise and too much blame. When things are bad, it's the quarterback's fault. When things are great, it's the quarterback's fault.
Yeah. So how can UCF lose the game?
I just have Oklahoma as the number 6 team in the country.
Well, yeah, I said like they have the formula on how to lose. They've done it a few times in a row now. So it's pretty easy to execute a losing formula against the number 6 team in the country.
Yeah, UCF trots out the same 11 guys on offense and the same 11 guys on defense as they have the rest of the season. And which I meant to fit this into one of our stats and I didn't. One other note I want to bring up in the press conference is they are once again tinkering with the goddamn O-line. Gus Malzahn said in the presser today that Drake Metcalf is now a guard. So I don't know what guard they're going to bench. He didn't say he's going to play. He just said he's a guard because it's like Marcellus Marshall hasn't been bad and Lokahi hasn't been bad. So I don't know what they're doing there, but Gus said
they're going to move Lokahi back like tackle or something, and they're going to keep jumbling everything around.
Gus said in his press conference today, after the bye week, after half of the games have been played, he said that they are moving closer to establishing 5 guys.
I can't wait till they establish like the ideal 5 starting offensive linemen for like the Texas Tech game.
Which a lot of these guys are like seniors. Like a lot of these guys are not coming back next year, so it's not even like they're. And someone asked him who actually is the starting center if everyone's healthy, and Gus sort of danced around the answer. I think it might be Caden Kittler, to be honest.
I think it is at this point, yeah.
Which is cool. That's like the one silver lining that's come from the season is they really hit on a good recruit there. So that's exciting for the coming years. Until he is Miami starting center next season.
What's your score prediction?
48-28 Oklahoma.
I said 59-21 Oklahoma.
I hope mine. Not
I hope you're right. 48-20. You say 48-28?
Yeah.
I'd take it.
I think the defense is going to get rolled, like just completely rolled over. And I think the offense has not through 3 games in Big 12 play, the offense hasn't been bad in any of them. So
No.
Now there have been bad moments for the offense. Timmy McClain has danced backwards out of bounds 2 separate times, but I think that
Only 2?
Well, for like significant losses,
Oh,
like
okay.
like ones that make you jump out of your seat and scream. It's happened twice, but
Yeah.
so I think that the offense will get some points. I could be totally wrong here, and I guess I might be wrong anyway, because if Oklahoma scores on their first like 4 possessions and then UCF has to start doing crazy stuff, that might not be the case. But I think the offense can put up some points. I do.
That's the thing, is like I think me having them at 21 points is probably too low because they'll get some in garbage time.
Yeah,
Like,
I think 28 feels reasonable. They're averaging 29 in
Yeah.
Big 12 play.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I don't know. Yeah, I hope they keep Oklahoma below 59, but I don't know. We'll see.
Time will tell.
I guess it will. Yeah, that's
They
one
made
certainty,
Arkansas
is time
State's
will
coach
tell.
cry. Arkansas State's coach cried on the sideline during the game. That's the team that UCF's playing this weekend.
That's good. All right, we can jump into the only piece of football news that I was a very quiet. I think just everybody was just really quiet last week in terms of just anything.
What was
like,
there to talk about?
I looked at UCF's timeline. It was just like, I think maybe a couple of happy birthday posts, and like that was it. Like they tweeted nothing. The one thing that came out a little late, like it felt like it was like an hour or 2 hours late on Monday, was the kickoff time for the homecoming game against West Virginia, which will be a noon game. I almost said noon o'clock. A noon game, and it'll be televised on FS1. So,
Which I nailed, by the way, like down to the letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of what I was gonna say. It's what we expected. Obviously, it's what you expected. You predicted it, but I don't think anyone can really complain about it at this point with how they've played. And this one was going to be a noon game.
Let all of you take your UCF hats off for a second. If you're a random fan, there's no reality where you're going to tune into the West Virginia UCF game next week, unless like it's coming down to the wire and it's crazy or something. Otherwise, you're not going to watch that game. So I don't mind the noon kicks, because since I like watching college football, like I'll get home early. We're not going to be doing the podcast in the middle of the night. I'll get to watch some college football and have a day after, but I get that they're not ideal for fans. They're not ideal for Shaquille O'Neal, who's now going to be DJing at 9 a.m. That's cool.
I forgot about that. Yeah. That'll be interesting. And I think, like, I was asking you earlier, I was like, what do you think the crowd's going to be like? And I was like, because it's Halloween weekend and everything. And I was like, I guess a lot of Halloween parties, or if you're going to Halloween Horror Nights, like that will be at night. So like a noon kick helps you in that case. But just
I think
with the way everything's going,
I think the crowd will be fine. I don't think it's going to be a total sellout or anything, but I think the crowd will be fine. Like you said, I think for Halloween weekend, it actually helps to be a noon game, because a lot of students got stuff going on that night, obviously.
Yeah. The game of the week now. Game of the week is UCF volleyball. They're 16-2 and 7-0 in Big 12 play. They play, and then this is probably going to change because the rankings for this week haven't come out yet. But last week, Baylor was number 20, and that's who they play this weekend. Baylor's 10-7, 4-3 in the Big 12. I don't really know why they're ranked, but they play Saturday at 3 and Sunday at 1. And I actually was going to like really go in on why are they ranked that high?
I don't know.
I don't get
Especially
it.
when UCF until today was not ranked. So,
are they ranked now?
Yeah, they're 24th.
Oh, no, I missed that. Okay, so then this is different. Did you know what Baylor is? Is Baylor actually still ranked?
No,
so I guess they probably will be, because they were 20 last week and they won both their games. So
it's
I would
the
assume
AVCA,
they are.
AVCA, right?
Okay. Yeah. But I'm just looking at Baylor's schedule, and like they've played a lot of good teams, but it's like we're rewarding them for losing to good teams. Like
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They lost in 4 sets to number 2 Wisconsin, which 4 sets fine. They lost in 3 straight sets to number 7 Minnesota. They beat number 18 Rice, who I'm not sure if they're still ranked. They lost to unranked SMU in 5 sets. They lost in 4 sets to number 11 Washington State. They beat number 19 Ohio State in 5 sets. And then number 10 BYU, they got swept. So I'm looking and like, yeah, there's 2 ranked wins, but I both in 5 sets, and all of their ranked losses, none of them were that close. So it's just weird to me. I don't know. I didn't think I'd be complaining about Baylor volleyball being ranked on this podcast, but it bothered me as I looked it up today.
I can't for the life of me get this poll, so sorry.
Okay. That's fine. But yeah, I don't know.
I've been arguing with some UCF fans, and I'm curious where you stand on this, because volleyball was picked near the bottom of the conference. They were picked to finish 9th in the Big 12, and they've obviously been very, very good so far. And I said they deserve to be ranked. And several UCF fans were like, well, they've only beaten the teams that were below them, which isn't true anymore. They now beaten Kansas State, who was picked ahead of them. But my thing is, a team that's 9th in the conference doesn't beat every team it plays, even if those teams are behind it. Like, good teams are the teams that beat all the bad teams. So if they're beating all the bad teams, they're clearly not the 9th best team in the conference. I don't know.
Right. I don't know. So yeah, Baylor is number 21. So they dropped 1. This is a top 25 matchup, 2 matchups this weekend. And I think if UCF can, even if they split these 2, maybe, I think that would at least probably gain them a little bit more cred, even among their own fan base. So let's hope that's the case.
It's kind of wild that with the coaching change, with everything. They really
with losing McKenna Melville.
With losing McKenna Melville and switching to a much tougher conference. So far, they have not missed a beat. I mean, those are three crazy variables to overcome.
Yeah. Tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week. Tweet of the week this week goes to I'm giving tweet of the week to accounts with one follower now. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I just wanted to bring this one up. It's Robert at BowlingBoss1992. I mentioned the tweet earlier in this podcast about how I would lock in a 17-point loss right now if I could for UCF. I tweeted that. He replied, said, to be fair, a lot of this is determined by talent on paper, which is our favorite saying on this podcast. UCF is one of the best teams in the Big 12 on paper. The difference is we have a coaching staff that doesn't know how to use the talent. So I wanted to bring this one up because I know we're an anti-coaching staff now, but have we gone delusional to the point that we are under the impression that UCF is one of the best teams in the Big 12 on paper? You know what the great thing about on paper is? It's actually on paper. I can pull it up. UCF is 9th in the Big 12 in 247 talent composite. Has the fan base been thinking this whole season? Are there fans that think that UCF has some randomly some superstar top 10 team and the coaches are like what? I'm
unfortunately yes, because there were people talking before the season started about UCF surprising some people and making the Big 12 championship game.
I forgot that.
So it's those people.
And then it gets better because I replied to them because this is where I'm at, guys. One follower and I'm replying. I don't know what's wrong with me. I replied to them and said, and this is what I was talking about earlier, where people just can't accept they were wrong. So he said UCF is one of the best teams in the Big 12 on paper. I replied and said UCF is 9th in the Big 12 in 247 talent composite. He replied and said, but we aren't last.
I love it.
What am I supposed to do? Whatever. I just, guys.
That's actually an elite response because what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to say?
I didn't reply. I was like, you got me.
Exactly.
You're correct. To all the UCF fans who I did not realize have been thinking through these 6 games that UCF had one of the best rosters in the Big 12, I'd want Gus fired too if I thought that. Could you imagine they were doing this with Oklahoma's roster?
Yeah. It's a combination of everything, but we've already gotten into that on the podcast. Yeah, that's pretty funny. But
Terry Malzahn was wearing a gold suit this weekend. How do you feel about that?
Good look.
Okay.
He looked really really upset in that one freeze frame.
I felt bad because I wanted to post a photo of it and I couldn't get a photo where he didn't look like that, unfortunately. So I just had to roll with it. Which I do want to say, because I posted a tweet and I said that, he's wearing a gold suit at Citroën Saturday, just jokingly. I thought that was clearly a joke. And a few people replied to tell me that there was an event at UCF that night that he was at the Constellation something or other. So he was dressed up for that. So Terry Malzahn not taking a stand on Canaveral Blue, just dressed to impress.
Yeah, dressed to impress. He did impress, I think. He looked very angry about it, though. We'll get out of here. We'll be back on Saturday after UCF and Oklahoma. We'll see what kind of mindset we're in. I think because we have such low expectations, I don't know, it can't possibly be worse than what we're expecting, can it? Scary.
Now that you've said that, I will say our podcasts after UCF gets killed are usually some of my favorite because we just get all unhinged and weird. It's generally fun. So it'll probably be a good podcast.
I can't see myself getting unhinged on Saturday just because I expect it.
No, but I'm saying one of my favorite podcasts we ever did was the podcast after the East Carolina game last year because we were just so what is there even to say? You just pulled up the countdown clock to the Gasparilla Bowl, which they didn't even go on the internet. They didn't go to the Gasparilla Bowl. They went to the Military Bowl where they lost to a real powerhouse. We'll see. It'll be fun. And plus, it's not gonna be a late night podcast. You're gonna get to listen to it in the daytime, which is cool.
Yeah, it will be Saturday afternoon. We'll be back with episode 169. But until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCA Simmons, and at Night Sports Now. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we will talk to you Saturday.
Bye, everybody.